Warm welcome to the EMA's Electronic Dance Manager Meetup number 2. It's really great to see so many of you here. My name is Michelle Ronquillo and I am EMA's event manager. Just a little bit about us. Within EMA, we unite music manager organizations across 13 European countries, which represent more than 2,000 managers across Europe. We've made it our mission to strengthen European managers globally through the Empower program, which encompasses education, advocacy, networking, and research. If you want to know more about us, or if you want to stay up to date with the upcoming events, make sure to visit our website, follow us on social media, join our WhatsApp group, and our mailing list. And I will put the links in the chat. Within the chat, there is also going to be a general manager contact list where you can leave your contact details and find the details of other managers. And also when you log off Zoom at the end of the session, a super brief survey will pop up. Please take a moment to fill it out. Your feedback is really helping us to improve our events. I'm going to share the agenda of today. Bear with me 1 second. So today we are in really good company, and Jess Partridge, EMA's executive director, is going to be moderating the conversation about brands and beats. Just to remind you that at the end of the session, there's going to be the breakout rooms. We will walk you through it a little bit later. And also, please write your questions in the chat so we make sure that they get answered. And without further ado, over to you, Jess.
Thanks so much. Thank you all for being here. And as Michelle said, I'm EMA's executive director. And I'm really, really happy today that we have Belinda and Yasemin with us. Thank you so much for being here. We're talking brand partnerships today, and I'm going to dive into it pretty quickly, but I will say, please put your questions in the chat. I'm going to be monitoring them throughout. This is your time. This is your space. So if there's things you want to know, now is the time to make sure you ask it. Great. So I'm just going to start off, obviously, and ask you to introduce yourselves and what you do. And yeah, then we'll dive straight into partnerships. Belinda, if we can start with you, that'd be good.
Cool. Hi all. Thanks for coming. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm Belinda and I'm Australian, but I'm living in Ibiza. And I have a small agency called Brands of Disruption. And what I do is connect artists to opportunities or brands to events and artists. So I'm the meat in the middle. I'm the glue in the middle. And I've been working with brands for a long time, and I've done a lot of collaborations. And I'm happy to share how you get brands to listen to you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yasemin, would you like to share more about what you do?
Of course. My name is Yasemin. I'm Turkish, based out of New York. I've been kind of working within the music and brand space for about 8 to 10 years, I would say. Currently, I'm director of client relations and creative production at Beatport. So a lot of the stuff that you've seen Beatport do within kind of brand partnerships, whether that's events or content or artist partnerships, my team works on that. And in the past, I've worked on electronic music partnerships, in particular with brands like Heineken, F1, currently with Miller, Samsung, Budweiser. So a lot of tech and liquor, I would say, in my portfolio. But yeah, looking forward to chatting with you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I want to start with just looking at how you individually, obviously you have quite different roles, but how you individually work with artists. So like what your process is so that we can establish, yeah, how things kind of actually work. And then we'll look more at how people can reach out to you and build brand portfolios after that. But Belinda, it'd be great to know more about how you work with artists. Obviously, you work with artists and managers directly at bringing them to brands. So say you're working with someone new, you're just signing up. How does it work? Like what's your process?
Okay, so when people or artists come to me and they have some talent and they wish to perhaps gain another revenue stream by collaborating with a brand, they'll come to me and they say, okay, because I have a portfolio of global brands. So they'll come to me and say, okay, how can you help me? And so I'll say, sit them down, talk to your artists and say, what are your artists' passions, values, interests? And then once you've established that, then I would say, okay, what brands do you actually want to work with? Because this is a really important thing, because you have to match the personality, you have to match everything that the authenticity, everything that would make a good recipe for success. So once you have established your top 10 brands, then you can work back from there on what brands to approach.
And you just start reaching out to them from that point, like, okay, tell them a bit of a story, give them why you're reaching out to them, regardless of what the brand is up to at the time.
So once you've established that top 10 list, then I would go into researching each and every one of those brands and see if those brands actually have a music strategy, if they have something that they want to talk about in terms of reaching a different demographic, or they've got up and coming activations, and go from there.
Nice. Thanks so much. That's really insightful. Obviously, it helps when things are authentic and they align, but the fact that you're starting at that point is really, really interesting. It's not just about like, okay, who can we get? It's like, who works with what we're doing? Yasemin, for you, how do you work with artists? What's your process of like maybe choosing artists and finding the right fit for your activations?
Definitely. I mean, it's almost as if we're the brand sometimes, because we work alongside the brand and kind of crafting what a campaign could look like. I mean, we do sit in that similar role to Belinda, where we're at times pitching as a media brand, but then the next step after kind of winning that deal or project is, okay, who do we work with? And that involves a lot in the process, actually, in terms of kind of what the brand is looking for. As Belinda mentioned, what's their music strategy? Are they trying to do something in education? Are they trying to kind of make a difference with emerging artists? Or are they trying to kind of create safer spaces? And that kind of music strategy, I think, informs who we want to initially have those conversations with. So we'll do a short list of artists, depending on what they're passionate about, similar to kind of what Belinda was saying. Yeah. The next step after that is, are they actually relevant to the market, whether that's age, demographics, geography as well. So exactly. Something we actually depends on, obviously, the caliber of the artist, but a lot of times look at their partnerships history too. Have they worked with a similar brand in the past, which shows, again, to Belinda's point of view, that they might be passionate about that space. But sometimes that also has the opposite impact, whereas if they're closely associated with a competitor brand for a long time, then we kind of maybe steer away from them. I think one other thing that we've been specifically looking at lately is kind of what the campaign entails. Is it an events campaign or a content campaign? So obviously there's different layers to it, but some artists are really passionate about touring and they love doing events, but they hate the camera and they don't want to give interviews. And sometimes the kind of campaign might be focused on kind of funny questions and interviews, or some sort of kind of content piece that needs them to be in front of the camera a lot. So a lot goes into it. I think one more thing I could add, actually. Sorry, I've spoken a bit too much.
Right.
I think now everyone has access to a lot of data as well. Like we can see the artist's stats through platforms like Vibrate. And I'm seeing more and more when brands come to us in terms of like they know which platforms they want to activate on, meaning is it Facebook? Is it TikTok, Instagram? Is it TikTok? Exactly. And now we can see the artist's audience base in those platforms, and even sometimes the territory breakdown within that platform. So that's been informing who we work with at Shortlist as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, when you're looking at where an artist is based, are you looking at where they are or where their audience is? Like
Where their audience is, exactly.
okay, awesome. So that kind of leads me really nicely on to the next question. Belinda, when you're working with or talking to a brand about an artist, what stats are they most interested in? What are they like? What are the hard-hitting things? I mean, obviously, Yasemin, you've already touched on maybe where your audience is located, but are they really looking at follower rates? So, like, what are the things that are getting them going, oh, that's cool, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, I think as Yasemin said, it's really important for an artist to have good, what brands look for. Not all the time, but they do look for good socials, good engagement, good video views on like YouTube and TikTok, I guess, and to see if that actually has had growth as well, because a lot of talent may have had like an event and really good numbers on the socials, but then they've kind of dipped down. So I think a brand will look for consistent growth, and a good image as well, like a not a sensible image, I don't want to say that, but something that's professional as well.
And how would they be measuring that growth? Like, as an artist manager, sometimes it can be very difficult to put these things front and center, like, hey, I've got 10,000 more followers over the last 2 months, you know, something like that. It can be really cheesy and not what like a lot of people like to do. So how can people highlight those things, like especially growth?
I think in terms of how they highlight them, or in terms of is probably about engagement, because I think you can have lots of followers but no engagement. So you have, you see them all the time on Instagram. You've got like 1 million views and like 3 people liking it or things like that. So I guess I guess the views would be important.
Nice.
Engagement, sorry, not views. Engagement.
Yeah, engagement. No, of course.
Sorry, guys, just bear with me.
I would also say I actually love receiving emails when managers talk about their artists. So not everyone does it, but every now and again I'll get a really nice email from a manager saying, this is what my artist has been up to. We did a tour, it did really well. This is what we did. This is how it turned out. We love those emails because from my point of view, there's so many artists. There's a lot of amazing artists out there, but there's so much noise as well, because there's obviously social media is really difficult to follow at times. And it's good to get those updates, even if you don't hear back necessarily. Like I sometimes read them and open them, skim through it, might not be reaching back out to the manager, but I think it makes a difference. And it shows like what the trajectory actually looks like.
Cool.
And obviously you don't want like every minute update, like you don't want managers sending you that stuff, but is there a particular thing that stands out as like, oh, it's useful to hear it at a time when, you know, we've announced a collaboration, or it's useful to hear it when you've done something really major, but what would those kind of major things look like to you?
I mean, I've seen lately, especially from kind of a brand point of view or a partnerships point of view, I think showing audience growth, whether that's through a tour, maybe not necessarily social growth, but content that's done well, like Belinda was talking about. We did this piece of content, we've gotten a lot of views and a lot of engagement on it. Look at how like great this piece of content is. We also have people that reach out to us at times when we do announce a new partnership, saying we'd love to put our artists forward to it. And I think that works really well. I actually see agents do it more than managers, which is interesting, especially because obviously that's their kind of day-to-day job as well as to get new gigs. But it's nice to see management do it, I think.
That's really, yeah, really fascinating. I hope your inbox doesn't get flooded. but key points, definitely make sure that you're looking, maybe if you do have that brand, that maybe that's a good place for managers to start, like making that list that Belinda was talking about, like 10 companies, and just keeping checked in with their activity. And so emailing them at key points that would make sense for either you or them. That could be a really great starting point, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Sorry to butt in here, but really important to research the brands on what they're doing, what they've done in the past, what they're going to do on LinkedIn, on newspaper, on Twitter, on everything, just to get a sort of like a real understanding of what the brands are doing.
Great. So now let's move on to a little bit of like looking at what a successful collaboration looks like. So you've got the collaboration, you've done the outreach, you've confirmed it. Like, what makes a successful collaboration to either of you? And do you have any examples or thoughts about times that you have seen really effective collaborations that maybe have had impacts beyond the campaign and after? Because it'd be really interesting to know what that looks like. I don't know if either of you want to jump in first.
Yasemin will be good at that one.
I mean, success, I guess there's the traditional metrics that everyone knows, the reach, impressions, views, engagement. I think press coverage is quite tricky to get, and that seems to be, I think, a positive for brands, especially if it's an organic, if you are able to get organic press. I do think that that happens at the higher level of the artists, and yeah, essentially, with the kind of more emerging artists, shareability and kind of getting more engagement, of that positive reaction in comments is really good. From the executional standpoint, I think a lot of times people don't really think about how the partnership actually worked on a day-to-day basis. Did the brand, the agency, or the partner in between and the management work well together? Because a lot of times partnership gets signed off, sometimes management becomes less and less responsive, and we end up working with managers time and time again. We go back to the same artists because their managers were amazing to work with. They are super responsive. They typically know what their artist wants to see and will kind of sign off, whether that's kind of that branded content we did, or that could be assets, or what an event looks like, or what branding looks like. And that kind of smoother process makes us think of it as a more successful partnership as well.
Absolutely.
If it was enjoyable from all parties, this is a key thing, because if it was difficult, or the artist was difficult, or the brand was being difficult, and you and it's not a pleasant experience, then it doesn't, even if the outcome is good, it doesn't resonate well with the actual flow. And I think the flow is really important for it to be fun as well.
Belinda, when you're doing these partnerships, what are you looking out for when it comes to like agreements and contracts? Is there anything that you kind of say to artists, like, this comes up a lot, or you don't have to do that bit? Is there things you push back on that you really feel like turn up in deals a lot, or people should watch out for when they're getting agreements through, or anything like that?
I haven't really had much experience in pushbacks, because once you have aligned with the brand and it has the flow, then usually both parties want to make it work. So,
Right.
I mean, unless, for example, as Yasemin mentioned earlier, maybe the artist doesn't like to do a particular thing, like to take photos or things like that. So that makes it a little bit difficult. But
yeah, you can.
From my side, I haven't had any pushbacks in that particular regard. No.
Really interesting. I know I've definitely experienced brand deliverables where it's like, okay, there's 10 YouTube videos or something that I need to deliver. This feels a bit too much. Like, can we push back and make it 5 or something like that? Is that something that happens regularly, and you're kind of happy with like brands aren't just going to be like, well, they're going to listen and negotiate on those things. Is that what happens?
From my side, brands try and get whatever they can, as much as they can, for little money, basically.
Okay. So yeah, have some boundaries. It's okay.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I was just going to say on a recent deal that I did was with a fast moving like a banana company, right? And they've so it's not with an artist, it's with a brand and an event, right? So you've aligned the company with the event, they're happy with the spend, but the client's always like, we want more activations on site. We want more social media posts. We want more influencer posts. We want more for their money.
Yeah.
Always the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's
All for the money.
very understandable. Yes, and did you want to add something there?
I'm actually blanking on what I was about
No,
to
it's
say.
totally fine. We have a question in the chat, and I
Oh.
want to work them in as they come in. So do brands appreciate it when you come to them with a very concrete concept, like this is what I want to do? Because obviously it has to fit in with what the brands do as well. Like how do you feel about that? Yasemin, maybe that would be a good one for you to start with.
I think really depends on the caliber of the artist and how much
Right.
budget you're asking for. I think there's actually a really positive trend at the moment with electronic music booming at this point, especially I would say in the last few years, where artists have grown so big that I think we've reached a level that they can ask for support from brands on their own projects, whether that's their tours, their own kind of projects, I don't know, merch stores, a concept that they're working on. But from a kind of emerging scale, I would say you're better off kind of working with what the brand strategy is, and that's kind of finding the right fit for you and then going after those brands. A lot of times also brands have limited budgets as well, and they're trying to ensure that they're meeting their own kind of I guess metrics that they need to show back to their bosses. So a lot of times they need to stick with what they're doing. But if it's I would say if it's a smaller spend you're after, if it's product you're after, which I think Belinda can speak to this as well, maybe that's something you can get away with.
Interesting. Then do you want to?
Yeah, for sure. I've got an example at the moment where I worked with Marshall over a couple of years, and Marshall have a brand called Earbuds, and they relaunched one of their models last year. And they've got Sven Vath and Martin Dietman. And so I approached them for one of my artists, and they're like, yeah, great. It sounds great, but we're not activating right now. And you look on their socials and they're not doing anything at the moment. So they don't have a budget, but my client came back to me and said, but I've got product. So that comes back to also brand deals can also not be just about money sometimes.
Absolutely.
It can be product. It can be what's called a contra deal.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important and great term, contra deal. Thanks.
It means there's no money, but there's product.
Yeah, perfect. And so if you were advising an artist or a manager, or Belinda, if you're taking on a new act, like what do they need to have ready to go? Like, what would you expect? Would you get them to clean up their social media, like make everything look cooler, fresher? Like what would be your priorities from that side of things? Yeah, you're pitching them, so you need certain tools in order to pitch. Like what are those tools?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, you have to have an authentic personal brand or personal, know who you are and who you want to be. And then, of course, then you've got the basics, a professional website with some demonstratable, like, I don't know, some press clips or videos or events or gigs that you've done on that. And EPK is important, electronic press kit, because that kind of basically tells you a little bit in a snapshot view to the brand, who you are, what you are, your numbers, where you've come from, your cultural values and everything. So I think it's important to have a EPK, a website, good socials. They don't have to be unreal, but they have to show engagement and an increase, like that you're going in the right direction. And if, I don't know, if you are attending industry events and networking and stuff like that, might be, or if the artist has done a talk like this or something, it's always good to be seen, to be active in your industry.
Absolutely. And mailing lists, do you find that there's a lot of there's a lot of talk about mailing lists and like direct to fan from artists work at the moment? Like, is that something that you're finding brands are particularly keen on or particularly interested in you having as an artist?
Yeah, sure. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, just because it is such a hot topic, like having direct fan access, not just social.
You only need 1,000 fans, apparently. Was it 1,000 or 500? What's that?
Yeah, 1,000 fan theory. Yasemin.
1,000.
I would also add, I think brands are still interested in kind of that being able to cross advertise on social media as well, whether that's, I mean, collab posts are now a huge thing as well, and like artists that are open to that. And I think everyone's now understanding it performs well on algorithms, so everyone's keen on doing them. But also just access for literal dark ads or paid advertising on socials is important, besides the kind of direct to fan email engagement. I think going back to your question as well, on what the artist should have, I think an indication, again, authentic indication of what they're interested in is great, because if they're really into fashion and they love posting about what they wear, that's a really good tool for a pitch. Or if they're really into auto or tech, because they're an amazing kind of producer, they love their studio, they love their gear. So all of this will help with the pitches.
That's really, really great, really interesting. Sorry, I'm just so bad at reading and talking at the same time. And someone asks a question, you
multitask.
It's just multitasking. So yeah, do you? Someone's asked if you can get a bit more into. Well, actually, I'm going to ask about collaborations. I don't know how much experience you have here, but someone's asking in the chat about the collaborations with freelancers from non-EU countries. Like, do you find that there are opportunities for those people, and do you have any advice specifically to them or anything?
Yeah, go local. Oh, sorry, go on. Go, Yasemin, go.
No, I saw, Marta, you're from Georgia. I am working on something in Georgia, so that's definitely possible. And there's, I think, a lot of global brands that if they do have a global music strategy, and if they have presence in that country, it's likely that they are doing some form of music activity in that country. But I would say, yeah, definitely, like, there's also brands that are just local to everyone's own country that activate within music. Because I think sometimes we think of it as just music, but it's cultural relevance. And brands want to be culturally relevant. So even if they might not have a specific music strategy, they want to work with creators, maybe, whether that's designers or musicians.
Yeah. Is that what you meant, Belinda, by go local?
Yeah, I mean, you've got a global brand, but when you think of these, like, so if you've got a global brand, they often have local budgets.
Right.
So, and then there's also brands that only activate locally in your particular country. So good to hit up them as well, because it
would
makes
they
sense.
likely have local representatives that you would contact, or would you go straight to kind of the more European or like representative to pitch your self.
Yeah, that comes down to your research on LinkedIn. You've got to go see who the brand managers are, where they are, and then actually the global, the head offices, and then I would have a look at the independent country managers as well, or directors, because and they all work together. Like, for example, a brand like Coca-Cola, they have budgets all over the world, but they have like a global team, and then they have an Italian team, or they have a Greek team, or that kind of thing. And each and all of them will have individual budgets.
Amazing.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you.
And even maybe if you do a global deal, like this is not this is So I used to work for a company called Play Network and another one called Image Sound, and we used to do global sonic identities, and we used to have, like, for example, like we've got Nike, for example, but we had to always get the budgets from each of the different countries as well, and they had to agree.
Right, yeah. So you couldn't just do
So
one overall.
yeah,
It was like having to agree
it's not as global as what you think. Sorry, I'm talking over you.
No. That's such an interesting insight, and really, really important to remember. But also that there are loads of opportunities locally. I think what you said there about LinkedIn as well is super important. Like, LinkedIn is an amazing tool for these things. You can see who's working at different companies, you can see who's working locally, and you can really hone in on who you might need to contact. I also want to add, definitely, like, use I'm sure you all are, but using conferences, like music focused conferences, the music person from a lot of the brands will go to these events, and you can often use the delegate database or whatever there is to find out who is there, and then reach out to them, especially if it's like one of those brands that are on your list, on that list of 10, like, for sure. Make sure you go meet them, and don't be afraid to reach out. We only have like 6 more minutes left of questions. There's a couple of questions in here. Christian's asking if you can go into deal terms in different cases at all. Obviously, it can be a bit of a tricky one, but if you do have any like deal term examples or something, Yasemin,
I mean, I can maybe kind of highlight what we have been looking at, especially lately. I mean, exclusivity is a big thing, because a lot of times, like, you want to make sure that as a brand, when you're exposed to the audience of the artists, you don't want a bunch of other brands exposed to it as well. I think that's also something that artists don't want. You want to kind of not oversaturate your channels. The term tied to that exclusivity is quite important too, and how that, I think sometimes people might not be reading into it as much, but content usage, is it only on socials? Is it also going to be out of home? That kind of should dictate how big that budget should look like. Are they going to be on packaging, or are they only in a certain country, or is it global? I think all of these will really impact what the deal terms.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is answering your question.
No, I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it's really useful.
Yeah, and then obviously there's the deliverables. As we said, brands usually want as much as they can get. Besides that, I think ownership of rights is something we look at, whether that's the brand or the artist. I would say look out for approval, having the ability to approve the content that goes out. What else?
That's
And a
so
licensing.
important.
Yeah, like Richard. Yeah.
I would even say cancellation clauses. A lot of times that's also not looked at if there's an event involved, similar to any kind of agency contract. But if it doesn't happen, is that going to be extended for, I don't know, 3 or 4 more months? And how's that going to impact you?
And your plans, yeah.
Yeah.
You might have something coming on like straight after a tour or something where you can't, like, yeah. And Natalia is asking, according to your experience, is it better to approach brands through a PR agency, or is it better through the manager? Or like, yeah, is there any particular rules? No, Belinda? Sorry, you shook your head.
No. I mean, PR is good, but they don't make decisions. You
Right.
always have to go with the decision maker. So I would like come back to the Bible of LinkedIn. Once you've established who is the brand manager or marketing director, you need to follow them, look at their activity, which gives you an insight to what the brand is doing, and then you have to somehow build a rapport with this person on LinkedIn online, whether it's commenting on their, because they have, like, say, for example, a brand will have a new flavored Coca-Cola and X manager puts it up, then you will like it and go, wow, that's really amazing, because everyone reads who everyone wants to be liked. So everyone wants to
Attention.
Does that make sense? Sorry.
Yeah, no,
what
it
I mean,
totally does.
let's
Like,
say it,
positive attention goes a long way. Flattery goes a long way.
yeah.
Like, don't be a, you don't have to be a kiss ass, but like you can say when things are good.
Be interested. Yeah, follow them, and because these relationships take a little bit of time to nurture, and some brands that I've been working with, like Swatch, for example, is over 10 years, and what happens in big companies like the Swatch company. So one brand manager might work at Swatch, but then he might go to Longines, or then he might go to Tissot. So you follow their journey as well, and you build a kind of online rapport or online relationship. And so then if you follow them, then you can say, oh, congratulations, you've got a new position. Or what I'm trying to say, you've got to build some kind of authentic relationship with them on LinkedIn if you can. And you actually, one important thing is don't always be asking, offer them, oh, I saw this, maybe this might interest you. And once you connect with them on LinkedIn, you might see something that was relevant. Oh, I saw this about your brand. That's really interesting. And you're not always asking. I don't know if that makes
absolutely.
sense.
And that goes the same for like if
You're giving as well. You're giving as well.
Well,
Because
when you're meeting up with brand managers, maybe on at a conference or something like that, you don't have to like pitch your artist. It's building that rapport is like super important, and long term will benefit you more than the immediate straight up pitch. So yeah.
I always think that if you can meet people IRL in real life, it's so much better than, this is ACE because it's worldwide and it's in one here, but if you can meet people in real life, it's much better because you connect with people a bit better. It's more authentic. It's like dating. Getting a brand is kind of a little bit like dating. Not that I'm very good at that, but you know what I mean? Like it's like wooing them, engaging them, making them interested in your talent.
Absolutely. So we are at the end of our questions. I'm really sorry. I want to stop it here, but our wonderful speakers will be joining the breakout rooms, which we'll be doing in a second. And also, we'll be sending around this recording afterwards. I think that there's quite a lot of advice for Beta for here, who's asked this longer question, but it's really, super relevant. And we'll be sending around the recording and some advice afterwards, thanks to Belinda. So we're not just leaving you in the lurch, don't worry. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for everything you have said, though. It was so interesting and really, really useful.